There's a misconception when it comes to coffee roasting. If you want to roast for a sweet cup of coffee, you want to roast light rather than dark. Here we go. What we're roasting today is going to be a wash processed geisha varietal from one of the best estates in Panama called Jensen. Super floral, really peachy. Let's put it in. Go in 70. So now we're going to use 800 grams of coffee. Always going to be above 80%, even 100 sometimes. Here we can control the air temperature. We can control what is referred to as halogen, which translates into radiant energy. We can even control the conductivity and change the temperature. This is one of the first machines in the world where you can actually use all of them using lower energy in the beginning of the roast. And the reason for that is because the first phase of roasting is called drying. So we're making sure that water comes out, and then we're slowly building up pressure. And that pressure is super important when we go into the second phase. And then here you can then see basically the different temperatures. The kind of purplish line, it's going to be the bean curve. So that shows basically the bean surface temperature. And then down here you can see basically the different energy distributions. The kind of orange line we have up here is what we call hot air. So that's the convection. The purple line that we see here is the halogen. And then we have also the drum heater, which is, you see a constant line down here. And drum heater and halogen is a very new thing in terms of roasting. Top line that we see here, the green one, called bean agitation. Basically, it can translate to, on a traditional machine, you would call it drum speed. What I reference as Maillard is starting to happen when the coffee is starting to become yellow. This is really where roasting kind of begins. Now in the Maillard, we have the creation of new amino acids, caramelization of sugar starting to happen. And this phase is really when we're starting to develop all of these different flavor notes. So it's really important that we know how much energy we're going to bring into it. There's a misconception when it comes to coffee roasting that a lot of the development is happening in the end of the roast because we call it development time. Because if you do this phase too fast, you're going to have too low body. You're not going to develop all of those flavors. If you do it too long, the body will be too heavy and you're going to lose a little bit of complexity. If you want to roast for a sweet cup of coffee, you want to roast light rather than dark. Because the challenge is that when we go into crack, where you have all of the pressure that we have built up into the coffee, suddenly it's going to release. What's going to happen is that deterioration, basically we're losing acids, we're losing sugars, and that's going to happen really quickly. That's why I developed the coffee more before crack, where we're not going to have a deterioration of anything. So now we're coming up towards crack, and we can see also on the beans that we're changing color, basically moving towards a much browner coffee, right? And as we're hitting crack, we're going to basically drop down the temperatures. So you can see on the screen here that the air temperature goes down, the halogen goes down, the other one stays the same, but they're going to continue to go down. Then I'm actually going to switch over to manual mode. So I'm going to change this profile just a little bit because I think we can make it a bit better. Changing up the temperature just a little bit. We're going to extend the time a little bit, pick up a little bit more temperature than what we did before, and you're going to see that this will come out really nicely. If we take this too far now, then we're going to develop these bitter flavor notes, and we don't want that. And we're going to take the coffee out. Here we go. Because I mentioned before that we have a phase called Maillard. So Maillard as a reaction doesn't stop until the coffee is cooled down. So it's really important when you roast, cool down the coffee as quickly as possible, stopping that process and making sure the coffee is tasty. You have to keep in mind that the end temperature, it's the main determining factor in terms of how many sugars and how much acids you still have in the coffee. And the texture of the coffee, to develop a lot of that in the beginning of the roast, which is why I'm ending up roasting much longer there, because I would prefer roasting longer before crack rather than after crack. Natural processed coffee tends to not react as aggressively at crack, whereas a natural processed coffee can actually continue on and we would have to drop down the temperature more. The choice of grind size will change the color. So if I would grind finer or I would grind coarser, then the color of the coffee would actually be very different. See it a bit better. Then we go scale. Usually we do 3 readings just to get That's about it. Almost all of our filters fall between, I say 100 to 105.
되게 선명하게 플로럴하고 안 익었다는 생각이 안 들고, 여기서 조금 더 다크했으면 약간 좀 더 비터하지 않았을까라는 생각이 들 정도로 빨간색, 분홍색, 노란색들의 향과 맛이 엄청 강한 것 같아요. 맛있다. 이런 맛있다. Delicious.
Delicious.
Very tasty. 맛있다.
It's a little bit harsh now because it's so fresh. Or after you roast coffee, you want to rest your coffee for at least 14 days before you drink it. So this will be even better as it ages. But you already have the like floral qualities, you have the peachiness, you have the citrusness. It's that whenever you roast coffee, you build up CO2 in the coffee. So CO2, which is a little bit like dirty flavors.
노르딕 로스팅의 장인에게 노르딕 로스팅을 배웠잖아요. 2부는 저희가 한번 추출 레시피로 가보시죠.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go.
How you roast the coffee and how you brew it is very strongly connected, right? We're gonna actually brew a Panamanian geisha, Lida Estate. So it's a brewer that we have made ourselves that is specially designed to get the most out of our coffees. And I designed this for the World Championship in 2019 when I was second place. This one is a natural process, and as you can see, we're always grinding very coarse. Grinding coarse allows us to extract better quality flavor notes. So for the hot filter, we're going to use 13 grams of coffee. What we do with all coffee at April, and I actually do this at home as well, is that we always pre-grind the coffee one day before we brew it. It's going to make sure to open up all the flavor notes a lot more. Going to be more consistent, kind of beautiful, clean taste experience that we're looking for. Dosing the ice brew, 20 grams in total, and we already have 100 grams of ice. The water, which sits at 92 degrees Celsius. First pour 100 grams of water. We're going to do 60 grams in a circle and 40 grams in the center. And then we're going to let that sit. We're going to start the other brew, and then we're going to do the same thing here. 100 gram pour, 60 gram in a circle, 40 grams in the center. And then when this is up at 40 seconds, I'm gonna do the second pour. So it's actually a very easy way to brew, but what it does is that it generates beautiful balance for the coffee and allows me to extract all of the flavor notes that I want to extract while giving us a beautiful body as well. So the second pour here as well at 40 seconds, I'm gonna pour another 100 grams. And that circle pour into a center pour. This recipe that is designed for the World Championship, for the April brewers, but it would also work on anything a bit darker as well. But especially when it comes to lighter roasted coffee, it works really, really well. Brew time that we're looking at here is about 2 minutes for the ice brew, and then we're looking at about 2 minutes and 20 seconds for the hot brew. For the ice brew, we're gonna pour that over another 100 grams of cold ice. And what we can expect from this coffee is gonna be very, very sweet, clear, kind of melon flavors. A lot of mango, a little bit tropical sensation. Citrusy qualities that we come to expect from a geisha coffee as well. Here we go. It's good? You like it?
너무 맛있고, 이게 어떤 느낌이냐면 그냥 부정적인 게 그냥 아예 없이 커피 안에 있는 것들을 다 끌고 온 느낌? 과일이랑 꽃노트가 너무 선명해요.
It's both like yellow and red, and that kind of combination is really interesting, especially as it cools down, more complexity in the cup.
자스민 같은 꽃 계열이랑 과일 노트들이 같이 복합적이기가 힘들거든요. 끝이 되게 클린해요. 쓴맛이나 부정적인 맛을 느낄 수 있는 포인트가 전혀 없어요. 거기다가 바디도 갖고 있고, 그러니까 밸런스가 엄청 좋고.
Iced coffees is really interesting, right? In Scandinavia, we don't drink iced coffees.
Yeah.
No. We always drink hot coffee. So it's very interesting when you try kind of our roast approach as a cold coffee. But I think it works pretty well.
핫이랑 아이스랑 레시피가 얼음이 있고 없고만 빼고 완전히 똑같은 것 같은데 맞나요?
We're using a little bit more coffee. The ice, we're using 20 grams. So that's kind of the biggest difference, right? How you pour water on the coffee on any brew method is very important.
물을 총 2차례에 걸쳐서 100g, 100g 이렇게 부어주셨어요. 첫 번째 부어주신 100g을 우리가 흔히 이야기하는 뜸이라고 생각하면 되는 건가요?
Blooming is an interesting concept. Blooming, what happens is that you have CO2 leaving the coffee pretty much, right? Part of why we're resting the coffee and part of why we're roasting lighter is to not have that CO2 in the coffee. I would argue when a coffee blooms up too fresh or has too much CO2 in it, you shouldn't be brewing it. First pour, and the reason why we pour more water, you want to saturate all of the coffee evenly and as quick as possible. That's why when we brew with the April brewer, we almost always do small brews. Because when you have less amount of coffees, you can cover the coffee easier with water. So then you're going to have a more uniform extraction.
물 온도는 지금 92도 정도로 사용하셨는데 게이샤, 워시드라던 밀도가 높은 콩들은 좀 더 물 온도를 높게 쓰는 편이신가요? 아니면 이 범주 안에서 쓰시나요?
I would actually recommend to not go up 92 because I think that provides with a cleaner cup. In theory, the idea is that a hotter temperature can build up more sweetness because you're extracting more sugar. But the thing is, because we're roast so light, we have all of these sugar in the coffee. So I don't actually have to bring up higher temperatures. That will still be really sweet and that will be a much cleaner expression.
하루 전에 원두를 갈아서 놓고 사용한다는 게 되게 인상 깊었거든요. 분쇄하는 순간 커피가 가지고 있는 이산화탄소도 같이 방출이 되지만 커피가 가지고 있는 좋은 향미 성분들도 같이 방출되는 걸로 알고 있어요. 그렇게 분쇄를 해놓으면 보관은 어떻게 하세요?
That after you actually grind it, you don't want it to oxidize too much. Have to store it in some kind of airproof environment pretty much. We actually use these to store the ground coffee. We don't have any more oxygen exposing the coffee. And as you can taste, there's a lot of flavors, right? And if I brew 100 of these in one day, they're all going to be the same. Because when you grind coffee also, the way that basically any kind of larger grinder works is that you have a much higher grinding uniformity and quality when you grind more coffee at the same time.
지금 사용하시는 필터는 그냥 일반 카리타 웨이브 필터인가요?
So the paper filters are actually 100% custom for us. And the paper we're using is very special for the brewer. When you start designing a brewer, you realize very quickly that paper filter is very important. What I call the filter holders in the center, the kind of three pieces. So the way we have air circulating and the pressure from underneath actually allows a faster, more uniform flow rate.
컵은 뚜껑이 있는 컵을 사용하고 계시는데 이것도 이유가 있을지 궁금하거든요.
And they were designed for the World Championship also. And the reason is that you want to make sure to trap all the aromas and keep it more temperature stable. And then for the judges, the idea was that it's more fun to actually have to open. Right? It's a little bit like giving someone a gift.
사실 이 영상을 보시는 구독자분들은 하리오 드리퍼를 사용하시는 분들이 많은데 하리오를 사용하더라도 지금 말씀해주신 에이프릴 원두를 사서 하리오 드리퍼로 내리시더라도 이 레시피를 따라서 그냥 내리시면 비슷한 맛을 낼 수 있을까요?
Because the brewer itself makes a big difference. It will be a different result, but you can still make a tasty cup of coffee. But you have to grind a lot finer.
오늘 이렇게 노르딕 로스팅 노하우부터 브링 레시피까지 설명을 해주셨는데 저희 구독자분들께 마지막으로 하고 싶으신 말씀이 있으시다면
Coffee is in this a really interesting time now. There's so much knowledge out there and it's all available. Thanks for you guys and other people on YouTube as well. Yeah, with that, I just want to say it's super cool to be a part of it, and I hope you guys learned something new here today as well.
You know, come back?
Come back.
Yeah, come back.
I'll go.
Yeah. It's good.
It's good? You like it? Paper filter is very important.